Zekthar stood at the viewing port of the Vorthik warship, watching the small blue and green planet below. His forearms were folded behind his back in the traditional stance of a junior officer. The scales on his neck shifted from dark blue to light purple, showing his excitement. This was his first real mission, and it was supposed to be easy. The planet had a simple name in human language. Kepler 442b. The humans had built a research station there 2 years ago. They were digging for rare metals and studying the local plants and animals. Intelligence reports said there were only about 300 humans on the surface. Most were scientists and engineers. Only 50 were soldiers. Commander Vexkol walked up beside him. The older Vorthak scales were battle-scarred and permanently dark green, the color of a veteran warrior. "Nervous, young one?" he asked in their clicking language. "No, sir," Zekthar replied quickly. "I am ready to serve the Empire." Vexkol made a sound that might have been laughter. "Good. This will be simple work. The humans are new to space travel. They have been flying between stars for less than 200 years. We have been conquering worlds for over 3,000 years." Zekthar nodded. He had studied the humans in training. They were weak compared to the Vorthak. Humans had only 2 arms and thin skin that could be cut easily. They were slow and could not see well in the dark. Their technology was primitive. The Vorthak had energy weapons that could melt through steel. Human weapons still used metal bullets and chemical explosives. "Why do we even need a full battle fleet for this?" Zekthar asked. "Could we not just send a few troops?" "The High Command wants to send a message," Vexkol explained. "Other species are watching. If we crush the humans quickly and completely, it will show everyone what happens when you take what belongs to the Vorthik Empire." The bridge officer announced they were ready to make contact. Zekthar watched as the communication screen flickered to life. The human who appeared was tall and lean, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple green uniform with the symbol of the Colonial Defense Force on his chest. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Colonial Defense Force," the man said. His voice was steady and showed no fear. "I am speaking for all human personnel on this world." Commander Vexkol stepped forward. "I am Commander Vexkol of the Vorthik Imperial Fleet. This world belongs to the Vorthik Empire. You are trespassing on our territory. You will surrender immediately and prepare for relocation." Morrison was quiet for a moment. Behind him, Zekthar could see other humans moving around what looked like a command center. They seemed busy but not panicked. "This world was not claimed by any species when we arrived," Morrison said finally. "We filed proper territorial claims with the Galactic Council 2 years ago. We have done nothing wrong." "The Galactic Council has no authority over Vorthak territory?" Vexkol replied. His neck scales were turning red with anger. "You have 1 hour to surrender. If you refuse, we will take the planet by force." Morrison looked directly at the camera. "Then I guess you better come and take it." The screen went dark. Zekthar stared at the blank display. He had never heard of a species refusing to surrender when faced with a Vorthik fleet. Most aliens gave up the moment they saw the massive warships. "Foolish," Vexkol said, but his voice sounded more puzzled than angry. "They must not understand how outmatched they are." The attack began an hour later. The first wave consisted of 200 Vorthik warriors in assault pods. They would land near the human research station and demand surrender. If the humans still refused, they would capture the facility with minimal damage to the valuable equipment. Inside, Zekthar watched from the tactical center as the pods streaked toward the planet's surface. The humans had no orbital defenses, no fighter ships, no way to stop the landing. This should have been over in minutes. The first sign of trouble came when the pods reached the atmosphere. The humans started shooting at them with surface-to-air missiles. The weapons were crude but effective. 3 pods were destroyed before they could land. "Where did they get military-grade missiles?" Vexkol demanded. "Intelligence said they only had small arms." "Perhaps they built them," suggested the intelligence officer, a thin Vorthak named Kekstar. Humans are known to be skilled at making weapons from whatever materials they have. The surviving pods landed in a clearing 2 kilometers from the research station. The assault troops immediately began their advance. Zekthar followed their progress on the tactical display. The human facility was surrounded by open ground with no cover. The Vorthic warriors should have been able to cross the distance in 10 minutes. They never made it halfway. The humans had turned the entire area into a trap. Hidden explosives went off under the feet of the advancing Vorthek. Concealed bunkers opened fire with machine guns and rocket launchers. The assault troops found themselves caught in a killing field with nowhere to hide. Zekthar watched in shock as the tactical display showed Vorthik warriors falling one by one. The humans were not just defending randomly. They were coordinating their fire, targeting officers first, then heavy weapons operators. Someone was directing the battle with skill that surprised the young alien. "Squad 7, fall back to the ridgeline," came a voice over the intercepted human radio frequency. It was a woman's voice, calm and professional. "Squad 3, move to support the eastern bunkers. Watch for their heavy weapons." The voice belonged to Lieutenant Amy Carter, according to the translation software. She was giving orders like a veteran commander. Not a soldier defending her first battle. After 2 hours of fighting, the Vorthik assault force was forced to retreat. They had lost 60 warriors and gained nothing. The humans had not lost a single position. Commander Vexkel stared at the tactical display. His scales had turned the pale yellow color of confusion. "How?" he asked. "How did they know exactly where we would attack?" "They had time to prepare," Kekstar said. 2 years. To study the terrain, to build defenses, to plan. "But they are just humans," Vexkel replied. "They should have panicked. They should have surrendered when they saw our warriors." Zekthar studied the display more carefully. The human defensive positions were not random. They were carefully planned to support each other, to create overlapping fields of fire, to channel attackers into kill zones. Someone had studied Vorthok tactics and prepared counters for every move. "Sir," he said quietly, "I think we may have underestimated them." Vexkel looked at him with 4 angry eyes. "They are humans, junior officer. Weak, primitive, barely evolved. From animals, we will crush them tomorrow with a larger force." But as Zekthar watched the tactical display, he wondered if his commander was right. The humans had just fought off a Vorthik assault force and made it look easy. They had shown no fear, no panic, no sign of the terror that usually paralyzed other species when faced with Vorthik warriors. On the surface below, the human research station continued its normal activities. Lights moved through the corridors. Radio chatter discussed supply inventories and duty rosters. It was as if the deadly battle had never happened. Commander Morrison's final transmission of the day was broadcast on all frequencies. "Vorthak Fleet, this is Commander Morrison. We are still here, we are still waiting, come and take it." The words sent a chill down Zekthar's spine. He had come here expecting to witness an easy victory over a weak species. Instead, he had seen something that challenged everything he thought. He knew about warfare. The humans were not afraid. And that, Zekthar realized, made them very dangerous indeed. The second day of battle began before dawn. Zekthar had not slept well. The images of Vorthik warriors falling to human weapons kept playing in his mind. He stood in the tactical center, watching as Commander Vexkel planned the next assault. "We will use 500 warriors this time," Vexkel announced to his officers. "We will attack from 3 directions at once. The humans cannot defend everywhere." Zekthar studied the holographic display of the human research station. During the night, the humans had been busy. New defensive positions had appeared. Fresh barriers blocked the approaches that seemed easiest yesterday. It was as if they could read Vorthik minds. "Sir," he said carefully, "the humans have changed their defenses. They seem to know what we are planning." "Impossible," Vexkel replied. "They are just scared animals building walls. We will break through easily." The assault began at first light. This time, the Vorthak used their heavy weapons from the beginning, energy cannons that could melt through steel open fire on the human positions. The aliens expected to see the crude human bunkers destroyed in seconds. Instead, the energy beams struck some kind of reflective armor. The shots bounced off harmlessly. The humans had covered their positions with polished metal plates during the night. How did they know our weapons would do that? Asked Kekstar, the intelligence officer. Before anyone could answer, the humans began shooting back. Their weapons were still primitive metal bullets and chemical explosives, but they were aimed with deadly accuracy. Every shot seemed to hit exactly where it would do the most damage. Zekthar watched through the eyes of the assault troops. The humans had turned their research station into a fortress. Every corridor had been blocked with metal barriers. Every room had firing ports cut into the walls. The humans were not just defending randomly. They had planned every detail. A Vorthak squad leader named Keksvalun reported over the radio. "We are inside the outer building, but every door is trapped. Every hallway has hidden weapons. We cannot move forward." "Push through," Vexkul ordered. "They are just humans. They will break." But the humans did not break. They fought for every room, every corridor, every stairway. When the Vorthak tried to use their energy weapons in the tight spaces, the humans had mirrors positioned to reflect the beams back at the attackers. When the aliens tried to use explosives, the humans had built their barriers to channel the blasts away from their positions. The worst part was the human voices. The Vorthak could hear them talking on their radios. But instead of panic or fear, the humans sounded calm and professional. "Sergeant Davis, they are trying to flank through the East Corridor," came a woman's voice. It was Lieutenant Carter again, directing the battle like a chess master moving pieces. "Copy that," replied a man with a rough voice. "We have that covered." "Parker, get ready with the surprise." "Ready, Sergeant," came a younger voice. A woman, who sounded barely old enough to fight. Zekthar wondered what the surprise was. He found out when squad leader Keksval's team tried to advance down the East Corridor. The humans had rigged the entire hallway with explosives. When the Vorthak warriors were halfway through, the charges went off. 6 Vorthak died instantly. The rest were trapped by fallen debris. "Medic!" Keksvalum called. "We need medical assistance." "Negative," came Commander Vexkul's voice. "Push forward. Leave the wounded." Zekthar was shocked. The Vorthak always helped their wounded. It was part of their honor code. But Vexkul was so angry about the slow progress that he was abandoning tradition. Then something strange happened. The human radio chatter changed. "They are not helping their wounded," came Sergeant Davis's voice. "That is not right." "Orders." "Our orders," Lieutenant Carter replied, "but we are not them." "Medical team, move out. Help anyone who needs it." Zekthar watched in amazement as human medics left their safe positions to help wounded Vorthak warriors. Dr. Helen Brooks, according to the intercepted communications, was treating alien soldiers with the same care she gave to humans. "Why are they doing this?" Kekstar asked. "We are trying to kill them. I do not know," Zekthar replied. But he was beginning to understand that humans were very different from other species. The Vorthak had fought. The battle continued for hours. The humans fought with weapons that seemed impossible. They had turned common research tools into deadly traps. Laser cutters became precision weapons. Chemical analyzers became bomb makers. Even their food preparation equipment had been turned into weapons. Private Lisa Parker was defending a choke point that connected 2 sections of the research station. Her position was critical. If the Vorthak broke through, they could split the human defenders and defeat them separately. Zekthar watched her through the tactical display. She was young, maybe 25 human years old. She had been a botanist before the war, studying alien plants. Now she was holding off 30 Vorthak warriors with nothing but a machine gun and determination. "Parker, you need to fall back," came Lieutenant Carter's voice. "You are about to be surrounded." "Negative," Parker replied. Her voice was steady despite the explosions around her. "If I leave, they get through. The lab full of civilians is right behind me." "That is an order, Private. Fall back now." Sorry, Lieutenant. My radio must be broken, Zekthar realized what was happening. The human was choosing to die to protect others. This was not military strategy. This was something else. Something the young Vorthak had never seen before. Parker held her position for another hour. She used every bullet she had. When her gun ran empty, she used grenades. When the grenades were gone, she used a knife. When the knife broke, she used her bare hands. She killed 12 Vorthak warriors before they finally brought her down. But she had bought enough time for the other humans to seal the corridor behind her. Her last transmission was heard. By everyone, tell my mom I did good. Tell her I saved them. The Vorthak assault force had to retreat again. They had lost over 100 warriors in one day. The humans had lost only 15 people. But those 15 had fought like demons. Commander Vexkul was furious. How can they fight like this? He demanded. They should be afraid. They should surrender. Sir, Zekthar said quietly, I think they are afraid, but they are fighting anyway. That makes no sense. It does to them, Zekthar replied. He had been listening to human communications all day. He was beginning to understand something important. The humans were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for something they called freedom. The word had no exact translation in Vorthak language, but its effects were clear. The humans would rather die than surrender. They would rather sacrifice themselves than let their friends be hurt. They fought not because they were not afraid, but because they were afraid for others. That night, Zekthar watched the human research station through the ship's sensors. The humans were repairing their defenses, treating their wounded, and preparing for tomorrow's battle. They did not seem tired or discouraged. If anything, they seemed more determined than before. Commander Morrison's nightly broadcast was shorter this time. We are still here. We are still fighting. Come and take it. But Zekthar was beginning to wonder if the Vorthak could. These humans were not like any enemy the Empire had faced before. They were not just defending their territory. They were defending their idea of what was right, and that, Zekthar realized, might be the most dangerous thing of all. He thought about Private Parker, choosing to die rather than abandon her post. He thought about the human medics risking their lives to help wounded enemies. He thought about the calm voices on the radio, organizing a defense that should have been impossible. The humans had something the Vorthak had never encountered before. They had a reason to fight that went beyond conquest or survival. They had hope, and hope, Zekthar was learning, was a very powerful weapon. The alarm on the Vorthak command ship began blaring at dawn on the 7th day of fighting. Zekthar rushed to the tactical center, his scales shifting to the pale blue of confusion. The sensor operator was staring at his display with 4 wide eyes. Commander Vexkul, the operator called out. New contacts approaching from the outer system. Multiple ships, human design. Vexkul rushed to the sensor station. His scales turned the dark red of anger as he studied the readings. How many? He demanded. 12 ships, sir. They appear to be military vessels. The lead ship is broadcasting identification codes. Use Defiant, commanded by Captain Maria Santos. Zekthar felt his stomach drop. He had studied human military records during his training. The Use Defiant was one of their newest warships. If the humans were sending military vessels, this was no longer a simple conquest. This was war. Impossible, Vexkul said. Our intelligence said the humans had no fleet in this sector. How did they get here so quickly? Sir, Kekstar the intelligence officer said nervously, the humans may have been planning this for longer than we thought. They might have had ships waiting in nearby systems. On the surface below, the human research station suddenly came alive. With activity, radio chatter increased dramatically. The humans were clearly excited about something. Cavalry's coming, came Sergeant Davis's rough voice over the intercepted communications. Hold the line, people. Help is on the way. Copy that, replied Lieutenant Carter. All units, prepare for final defense. We just need to hold a little longer. Zekthar studied the tactical display. The human defenders had been slowly losing ground for 6 days. Their ammunition was running low. Their food supplies were almost gone. Many of their fighters were wounded. But instead of sounding defeated, they sounded hopeful. The human fleet was still 2 hours away from the planet. But already, the defenders were fighting with renewed energy. It was as if the mere knowledge that help was coming had made them stronger. "Sir," Zekthar said to Commander Vexkal, "should we retreat until we can bring more ships?" "Never," Vexkal replied. His scales were now the deep black of rage. "We have been humiliated by these primitive humans for too long. We will finish this before their reinforcements arrive." The final assault began immediately. Every available Vorthek warrior was sent to the surface. The aliens had superior numbers, superior weapons, and superior technology. This should have been the end of human resistance, but the humans had been preparing for this moment. They had saved their best surprises for last. As the Vorthek assault force approached the research station, the ground beneath them began to shake, then it exploded. The humans had spent 6 days digging tunnels under the battlefield. They had filled those tunnels with every explosive they could make. The explosion was visible from orbit. When the smoke cleared, there was a crater where the main Vorthek force had been. Over 200 warriors had been killed in seconds. How? Vexkal demanded. How did they dig tunnels without our sensors detecting them? They used their research equipment, Kekstar replied, checking his instruments. Geological survey tools, mining lasers, even kitchen utensils, they turned everything into weapons. The surviving Vorthek tried to regroup, but the humans were not finished. Small teams of human soldiers emerged from hidden positions all around the battlefield. They were not trying to hold ground anymore. They were hunting. Major Kevin Walsh led one of these teams. He was a career soldier who had fought in 3 previous wars. His voice was calm as he directed his squad through the chaos. "Delta Team, take the high ground," Walsh ordered. "Bravo Team, cut off their retreat. Charlie Team, with me. We are going to show these aliens what humans do when we get angry." The Vorthek found themselves fighting a completely different kind of battle. Instead of defending fixed positions, the humans were everywhere at once. They used the terrain like a weapon, appearing from behind rocks and trees, striking fast, then disappearing before the aliens could respond. Zekthar watched in amazement as the humans coordinated their attacks. They were using hand signals, coded radio messages, and what seemed like mind reading to work together. Every human soldier seemed to know exactly what every other human was thinking. "Squad 7, enemy position 200 meters northeast," came a voice over the radio. It was Captain Rob Taylor leading another human team. "I see them," replied Corporal Matt Turner. "Setting up for flanking maneuver." "Negative," Walsh interrupted. "They are expecting that. Go around the south side. We will keep them busy." The humans were not just fighting harder. They were fighting smarter. Every move was calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum risk. They had turned warfare into a science, but the most disturbing thing was their attitude toward wounded enemies. Even in the middle of the chaos, human medics continued to help injured Vorthek soldiers. Dr. Helen Brooks was treating alien and human wounded side by side in a makeshift field hospital. "Why do you help us?" asked a wounded Vorthek warrior named Texmar. He was missing one arm and had burns across his chest. "Because you are hurt," Dr. Brooks replied simply. "That is what we do. We help people who are hurt. But we are enemies." "Right. Now you're just someone who needs help." Zekthar could not understand this. In every war the Vorthek had fought, the enemy tried to kill wounded soldiers. It was practical and efficient. But the humans seemed to have rules that went beyond practicality. The tide of battle turned when the human fleet arrived. Captain Santos did not try to fight a traditional space battle. Instead, she used her ships like flying artillery. The human vessels dropped into low orbit and began providing fire support for the ground forces. "Danger close fire mission," came Walsh's voice over the radio. "Grid reference 347 to 892. Enemy force in the open." "Copy that," replied Captain Santos from orbit. "Guns, guns, guns." The Ogotal bombardment was precise and deadly. The human ships could hit targets the size of a small building from space. The remaining Vorthek forces found themselves caught between the defenders on the ground and the guns in the sky, but even more important than the firepower was the psychological effect. The humans on the ground fought with the confidence of people who knew they were no longer alone. They took risks they would never have taken before. They pushed forward instead of just defending. Commander Morrison's voice came over the radio. All units, advance. Push them back. Show them what happens when they pick a fight with humans. The Vorthek retreat began slowly, then became a rout. The warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves running from humans who had been studying plants and rocks a week ago. Sir, Zekthar said to Commander Vexkal, we should call for reinforcements. The humans have changed the rules. The rules have not changed, Vexkal replied. But his scales were the gray color of defeat. We just never understood what the rules were. The human fleet took position around the planet. Captain Santos sent a message to the Vorthek command ship. This is Captain Santos of the human colonial defense force. You have attacked our people without cause. You have 30 minutes to withdraw from this system. If you refuse, we will consider you hostile and act accordingly. They are bluffing, Vexkal said. They do not have enough ships to fight our entire fleet, but Zekthar was not so sure. He had watched the humans fight for 7 days. They had turned a hopeless situation into a victory through pure determination and clever tactics. They had made weapons out of research tools and turned scientists into soldiers. Most importantly, they had shown mercy to their enemies while never showing weakness to their attackers. They had rules about how to fight that made them stronger, not weaker. Sir, he said quietly, maybe we should listen to them. On the surface below, the human research station was still there. The flag was still flying. Commander Morrison was still broadcasting his daily message. We are still here. We are still fighting. Come and take it. But now, Zekthar realized, the humans were not just defending anymore. They were ready to take the fight to anyone who threatened them. And that changed everything. 3 weeks had passed since the human fleet arrived. The war had spread across the entire planet. What started as a simple conquest had become something much larger and more terrifying. Zekthar found himself assigned to a reconnaissance unit, tasked with understanding how the humans were managing to fight on so many fronts at once. The answer, he discovered, was both simple and frightening. The humans did not just fight with soldiers. They fought with their entire civilization. Look at this, said Yextar, his reconnaissance partner, pointing at the sensor readings. The humans have established 17 different bases across the planet. Each one is completely different. Zekthar studied the data. It was true. Every human commander seemed to have their own way of fighting. Colonel Steve Mitchell ran his base like a fortress, with heavy defenses and carefully planned positions. Major Julie Adams preferred mobile tactics, moving her forces constantly to keep the Vorthek guessing. Captain Rob Taylor specialized in night attacks that came out of nowhere. How do they coordinate? Yextar asked. They should be confused, giving each other conflicting orders? They do not seem to need central control, Zekthar replied. Each commander knows what the others are doing without being told. This was the most disturbing thing about fighting humans. The Vorthek military worked through strict hierarchy. Every order came from the top down. If the command structure was broken, the entire army would collapse. But the humans seemed to work differently. Every soldier could think for themselves and make decisions. The reconnaissance mission took them to the northern continent, where Lieutenant Colonel Dana Foster was building something impossible. She was a military engineer who had been given broken equipment, scrap metal, and damaged vehicles. Somehow, she was turning it all into working weapons. That is not possible, Yextar said, watching through their concealed observation post. Those parts do not fit together. That metal cannot support that much weight. But Dana Foster was making it work anyway. She had taken the wreckage of 3 Vorthek vehicles and built them into one working tank. She had used damaged human computers and alien power cells to create a communication system that could reach across the planet. She had even built weapons using mining tools and kitchen equipment. Humans are impossible, Zekthar muttered. They break every rule of engineering and physics. No, came a voice behind them. We just follow different rules. Both Vorthak spun around, reaching for their weapons. A human soldier was standing 10 meters away, pointing a rifle at them. He was young, maybe 25 years old, with dirty blonde hair and tired green eyes. His uniform said his name was Corporal Matt Turner. Do not move, Turner said calmly. I have friends watching from 3 different directions. If you try anything, you will be dead before you hit the ground. Zekthar realized they had been caught by someone who should not have been able to sneak up on them. Vorthak had excellent hearing and night vision. How had this human gotten so close? How long have you been watching us? Yextar asked. About 6 hours, Turner replied. You have been studying our engineering team since yesterday. We figured you would come here eventually. You knew we were coming? Captain Nicole Gray predicted it. She studies your people the same way you study us. She said Vorthak scouts always check the engineering sites to understand our supply lines. Zekthar felt a chill. The humans had been watching the Watchers. They had predicted Vorthak behavior and planned accordingly. This was not just military tactics. This was something deeper. Why have you not killed us? He asked. Turner seemed surprised by the question. Why would I kill you? You are not attacking anyone. You're just watching. We are enemy soldiers. You are enemy scouts. There is a difference. Besides, maybe you can learn something useful and end this war faster. This made no sense to Zekthar. Every other species the Vorthak had fought would have killed enemy scouts immediately. But the humans seemed to have rules about when killing was necessary and when it was not. Turner escorted them to a human camp where they met Captain Gray. She was a small woman with dark hair and intelligent brown eyes. Her job was studying alien cultures and predicting enemy behavior. She had been watching the Vorthak for weeks. Your people are very predictable, she told them over a cup of coffee. You always attack the same way. You always retreat the same way. You never change your tactics. Our tactics have worked for 3,000 years, Yextar replied defensively. Against who? Gray asked. Have you ever fought anyone who fought back the way we do? Zekthar thought about this. The Vorthak had conquered many worlds, but most species surrendered quickly when faced with superior technology. The few that fought usually used conventional military tactics. None had ever turned their entire civilization into a weapon. Your people are different, he admitted. Yes, we are, Gray agreed. Do you know why? She showed them a map of human space. It was not very large compared to the Vorthak Empire. But every world was connected to every other world by trade routes, communication networks, and mutual defense agreements. We do not just conquer, Gray explained. We build. Every human world supports every other human world. When you attack one of us, you attack all of us. This was why the human reinforcements had arrived so quickly. This was why every human soldier seemed to know what every other human was thinking. They were not just an army. They were a family. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency broadcast. A human supply convoy was under attack 50 kilometers away. The Vorthak had finally managed to cut one of the human supply lines. We have to help them, Turner said, grabbing his weapon. It could be a trap, Gray warned. Probably is, Turner agreed. But those are our people out there. Zekthar watched as the humans organized a rescue mission in minutes. They did not wait for orders from headquarters. They did not form committees to discuss the risks. They just acted. The rescue force was led by Major Kevin Walsh, who had been coordinating supply runs across the planet. His vehicles were not military transports. They were converted civilian trucks, mining equipment, and even farm vehicles. But they moved with the coordination of a professional army. Alpha Team, take the ridge line, Walsh ordered over the radio. Bravo Team, circle around from the south. Charlie Team, straight up the middle. Hit them fast and hard. The Vorthak ambush had been well planned. They had chosen a narrow canyon where the human convoy could not maneuver. But the humans did not try to maneuver. They went straight through the middle. Using their vehicles as weapons, Zekthar watched through his binoculars as a human supply truck, driven by a woman named Linda Foster, rammed straight through a Vorthek roadblock. The truck was damaged and smoking, but it kept moving. Behind it, other humans were already setting up defensive positions to hold the road open. "Why do they risk so much for a few supplies?" Yextar asked. "Because those supplies keep people alive," Captain Gray replied. "And to humans, every life matters." The battle lasted only 30 minutes. The humans rescued their convoy and drove off the Vorthek attackers. But what impressed Zekthar most was what happened afterward. The humans did not just leave. They stayed to repair the road, to clear the wreckage, to make sure other convoys could get through safely. "You see," Gray said, "we do not just fight to win battles. We fight to build something better." That night, Zekthar was allowed to send a message to the Vorthek fleet. Commander Vexkol wanted to know what he had learned about human logistics and supply lines, but Zekthar found it hard to put his observations into words. How could he explain that the humans turned every civilian into a soldier and every soldier into a builder? How could he describe people who risked their lives for strangers and showed mercy to enemies? "The humans do not follow our rules of war," he reported finally. "They follow their own rules, and their rules make them very dangerous." "Explain," Vexkol demanded. "They fight for something bigger than victory," Zekthar said. "They fight for each other, and that makes them willing to do things that should be impossible." There was a long silence on the communication channel. Finally, Vexkol spoke. "Return to the ship. We need to discuss this." But as Zekthar prepared to leave the human camp, he realized something important. He did not want to go back to the Vorthak fleet. He wanted to stay and learn more about these strange, impossible, wonderful humans who had turned war into something he had never seen before. For the first time in his life, Zekthar was questioning whether the Vorthik way was the only way, and that thought scared him more than any human weapon ever could. The call from the Vorthak High Command came 2 months after the war began. Zekthar stood in the communication chamber of the flagship, watching as the holographic image of Supreme Commander Rex Thule appeared. The old warrior's scales were the deep purple of extreme anger. "This has gone on long enough," Rex Thule declared. "A simple conquest has become a humiliation. The entire galaxy is watching us struggle against primitives." "This ends now," Commander Vexkol bowed his head. "Supreme Commander, the humans are more difficult than anticipated. They fight with tactics we have never encountered." "Then we will use tactics they have never encountered," Rex Thule replied. "I am sending the Death Guard, every elite warrior we have. Every advanced weapon in our arsenal. Crush these humans completely." Zekthar felt his heart sink. The Death Guard were the Vorthek Empire's best soldiers. They had never been defeated in battle. They had destroyed entire civilizations without mercy. If they came here, the war would become something terrible. The Death Guard fleet arrived 3 days later. 50 ships filled with 10,000 elite warriors. Their commander was General Torvak, a legend even among the Vorthek. He had conquered 40 worlds and never lost a single battle. "Where is the human fleet?" Torvak asked when he saw the tactical display. "Scattered across the system." Vexkol replied, "They refuse to fight a proper space battle. They use hit and run tactics, striking our supply ships and disappearing." "Cowards," Torvak spat. "We will crush them on the ground where they cannot run." But General Paul Harrison, the human commander, was already preparing for this final battle. The humans had spent 2 months studying Vorthek tactics and building defenses. They knew the elite troops were coming. "This is it, people," Harrison's voice came over the intercepted communications. "Everything we have learned, everything we have built, comes down to this fight. The enemy is bringing their best. We need to be better than our best." The human strategy was simple and terrifying. Instead of trying to defend fixed positions, they would make the entire planet into a battlefield. Every mountain, every forest, every valley had been turned into a trap. The Death Guard landed at dawn. 10,000 elite warriors in full battle armor, carrying weapons that could level buildings. They expected to crush human resistance in hours. They walked into a nightmare. The humans had spent 2 months preparing the battlefield. Every tree had been cut to fall in a specific direction. Every rock had been moved to create cover or block enemy movement. Every stream had been dammed or diverted to flood key areas at the right moment. Colonel Frank Lewis led the first ambush. His team had been waiting in hidden positions for 3 days, watching the Vorthik landing zones. When the Death Guard began their advance, the humans struck from everywhere at once. "Now," Lewis whispered into his radio, the forest exploded. Trees that had been weakened fell across the Vorthik columns. Hidden explosives turned the landing zone into a crater. Snipers opened fire from positions that should have been impossible to reach, but the Death Guard were not ordinary soldiers. They adapted quickly, using their advanced weapons to clear the obstacles. Their energy shields protected them from the worst of the human attacks. Within an hour, they had broken through the first line of defense. "Phase 1 complete," came Lieutenant Amy Carter's voice. She was now a captain, promoted after months of successful combat operations. Falling back to Phase 2 positions. The humans retreated, but it was not a panicked flight. Every step backward was planned. Every defensive position was designed to channel the Vorthak into the next trap. Zekthar watched from orbit as the battle unfolded. The humans were fighting brilliantly, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned. The Death Guard pushed forward, relentlessly destroying everything in their path. "Sir," he said to General Torvak, "the humans are retreating to their main defensive positions. We should be careful of traps." "Traps are for cowards," Torvak replied. "We will crush them with superior force." But the humans had one more surprise. As the Death Guard approached the main human base, the ground beneath them began to shake. Not from explosives this time. From machinery. The humans had spent 2 months building massive excavation equipment. Mining lasers powerful enough to cut through solid rock. Drilling machines that could bore through a mountain. They had turned their entire industrial capacity into weapons. What are they doing? Torvak demanded as the sensors showed massive underground activity. The answer came when the humans triggered their final trap. The excavation equipment had weakened the ground beneath the main Vorthak force. When the charges went off, an entire mountainside collapsed, burying thousands of Death Guard warriors. But even this was not enough. The surviving Vorthak pressed their attack. They reached the human base as the sun was setting, ready for the final assault. That was when they discovered what human desperation really looked like. Commander Jake Morrison was still alive, still fighting after 2 months of war. He stood on the walls of the research station, now rebuilt into a fortress, and addressed his defenders over the loudspeaker. "This is it," he said. "This is what we have been preparing for. They think they can break us with superior numbers. They think they can scare us with fancy weapons. But they do not understand what they are fighting." Morrison's voice carried across the battlefield. "We are not just defending a research station. We are defending the idea that people should be free to choose their own path. We are defending the right to build something instead of just destroying it. We are defending hope." The final assault began at midnight. The Death Guard attacked with everything they had. Energy weapons that could melt steel. Explosives that could level buildings. Armored vehicles that seemed unstoppable. The humans met them with weapons that should not have worked. Improvised cannons built from mining equipment. Missiles made from research rockets. Barriers constructed from whatever materials they could find, but most importantly, they fought with the knowledge that they were not alone. Every human on the planet was connected by radio, by shared purpose, by the determination to protect something precious. Sergeant Rick Davis led a squad of defenders who had been fighting for 2 months. They were tired, wounded, and outnumbered. But they held their position because behind them were civilians who depended on them. Dr. Helen Brooks continued to treat wounded soldiers from both sides, even as energy beams flew over her head. Her field hospital became a symbol of what the humans were fighting for. The right to help others, even enemies. Private Lisa Parker had been dead for weeks. But her sacrifice had inspired dozens of others to follow her example. Young soldiers, who should have been studying or working, were instead holding the line against an elite alien army. The battle raged through the night. The Death Guard pushed forward step by step, paying for every meter with blood. The humans gave ground slowly, making the enemy pay for every victory. As dawn approached, General Torvak realized something terrible. His elite force was being stopped by humans who should have been defeated weeks ago. The Death Guard, who had never failed, were failing now. How? He demanded. How can they still be fighting? Zekthar had been watching the battle all night. He had seen things that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. Humans fighting with broken weapons. Wounded soldiers refusing to retreat. Civilians joining the battle to protect their friends. Sir, he said quietly, I think they are fighting for something we do not understand. Explain. They are not fighting to win. They are fighting because they believe it is right, and that makes them impossible to defeat. On the surface below, Commander Morrison's voice came over the radio one more time. We are still here. We are still fighting. And we will never stop fighting for what we believe in. The words sent a chill through every Vorthek who heard them. For the first time in 3,000 years of conquest, the Empire had found an enemy that could not be broken, and that changed everything. The silence after the battle was strange. For 3 months, the planet had echoed with the sounds of war. Explosions, gunfire, shouting voices over radio channels. Now there was only the quiet of exhausted soldiers and the gentle hum of medical equipment. Zekthar walked through the human medical camp, escorted by Captain Nicole Gray. The woman who had studied his people for months was now helping to arrange the peace talks. Around them, human and Vorthak medical staff worked side by side, treating wounded from both armies. Your General Torvak has agreed to a ceasefire, Gray said. But he refuses to admit defeat. The Death Guard has never surrendered, Zekthar replied. It would be easier for him to die than to accept that humans could stop them. We did not stop them, Gray corrected. We just convinced them that the cost was too high. This was the truth that hurt the most. The Vorthak could have won the battle if they had been willing to accept enormous casualties. But the humans had made them pay such a terrible price for every small victory that continuing the war seemed pointless. The human research station still stood, though it was badly damaged. Commander Jake Morrison was alive, though he walked with a limp and his left arm was in a sling. He had refused medical evacuation, insisting on staying with his troops until the fighting ended. We need to talk, Morrison said when he saw Zekthar. Your people and mine. This war should never have happened. The peace negotiations took place in what had once been the research station's main laboratory. The room was scarred by weapons fire and patched with metal plates, but it still worked. Humans and Vorthek sat across from each other at a table made from a piece of salvaged hull plating. General Torvak looked older than when he had arrived. His scales had faded to the gray of defeat, though he still carried himself with military pride. Across from him sat General Paul Harrison, the human commander who had turned a hopeless defense into a strategic victory. State your terms, Torvak said simply. Complete withdrawal of all Vorthak forces from this system, Harrison replied. Recognition of human territorial claims as filed with the Galactic Council. Establishment of a neutral zone between our territories. And in return, we will not pursue your retreating forces. We will provide medical assistance for your wounded. We will return any prisoners of war in good condition. Torvak was quiet for a long moment. That is all? You do not demand tribute? You do not want us to cede territory? We want peace, Morrison added from his place at the table. We want to go back to studying plants and rocks and building things. We never wanted to fight a war. This seemed to confuse the Vorthak general more than anything else. In his experience, victory was followed by demands for territory, resources, and submission. But the humans seemed to want nothing more than to be left alone. Why? Torvak asked finally. You have proven you can fight. You have defeated our best warriors. Why do you not press your advantage? General Harrison considered the question. carefully. Because we do not fight to conquer, we fight to protect. Now that you are no longer a threat, we have no reason to continue fighting. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The humans asked for simple things: safe passage for their supply ships, communication protocols to prevent future misunderstandings, mutual assistance in case of medical emergencies. The Vorthak, accustomed to complex treaties full of tributes and territorial concessions, kept waiting for the real demands to begin. They never did. On the final day, General Linda Foster arrived from Earth. She was a diplomat who had also served as a soldier, giving her the respect of both human military leaders and alien commanders. Her job was to turn the ceasefire into a permanent peace. The human government has authorized me to offer a formal treaty, she announced. Not just between our military forces, but between our civilizations. The treaty was unlike anything the Vorthak had ever seen. Instead of defining what each side could not do, it defined what they could do together. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, joint scientific research projects. You want to work with us? Torvak asked in amazement. After we tried to destroy you? That is what humans do, Foster replied. We build things. We make connections. We turn enemies into friends whenever possible. Zekthar had been quiet during most of the negotiations, but now he spoke up. General Foster, I have watched your people fight for 3 months. I have seen things that challenge everything I thought I knew about warfare. May I ask you a question? Of course. Why do humans show mercy to enemies? Why do you help people who are trying to kill you? It makes no strategic sense. Foster smiled. Because we believe that every person has value. Human, Vorthak, or any other species. When we see someone who is hurt, we help them. When we see someone who is lost, we guide them. When we see someone who is angry, we try to understand why, but that makes you vulnerable. Your enemies can exploit your compassion. Sometimes, Foster agreed, but it also makes us stronger in ways that are hard to measure. When people know you will treat them fairly, they are more likely to work with you instead of against you. She gestured to the mixed medical teams working outside. Look at your wounded soldiers. They are receiving the same care as our wounded soldiers. How do you think that makes them feel about humans? Zekthar had to admit that many Vorthak warriors had been confused by human medical care. They had expected torture or abandonment. Instead, they had received skilled treatment and genuine concern for their welfare. The treaty was signed 2 weeks later. The Vorthak fleet withdrew from the system, carrying stories that would spread throughout the galaxy. Stories of humans who fought like demons when threatened, but who showed mercy to defeated enemies. Stories of soldiers who could turn mining equipment into weapons and research stations into fortresses, but most importantly, stories of people who fought not for conquest, but for the right to build something better. Zekthar was assigned to the new Vorthak embassy on the human world. His job was to help prevent future misunderstandings between the two species. It was work he had never imagined doing, but it felt more important than anything he had done before. On his first day as a diplomat, he walked through the rebuilt research station. The humans had not just repaired the damage from the war. They had expanded it, adding new laboratories and living quarters. They were already planning to invite other species to join their research projects. Commander Morrison found him standing in the memorial garden the humans had built. It honored the dead from both sides, Vorthak and human names carved into the same stone monument. Do you regret coming here? Morrison asked. Zekthar thought about the question carefully. The war had cost thousands of lives and changed everything. He thought he knew about his own people, but it had also shown him something he had never seen before. No, he said finally. I learned something important here. I learned that there are different ways to be strong. The Vorthak way has served us for 3,000 years, but it is not the only way. What is the human way? Morrison asked. You build things, Zekthar replied. You make connections. You turn enemies into friends? And somehow that makes you stronger than any weapon. The memorial garden was quiet except for the sound of Wind through the alien trees the humans were now studying instead of hiding behind. It was a peaceful sound, the sound of people working together instead of fighting each other. Zekthar understood now why humans called their stories humanity. Yeah. It was not boastfulness about their weapons or their courage, though they had plenty of both. It was pride in something more important. Pride in their ability to take the worst situations and find ways to make them better. The humans had not just won a war. They had turned an enemy into an ally, a battlefield into a research station, and a story of destruction into a story of hope. And that Zekthar realized was the most powerful weapon of all.